Hello there and welcome. This video will take you through the latest DICE updates for Season 5, about Irish and Dozer. But before we go into the rather drastic changes of Irish, they pointed out another quite interesting thing, which might just make 2042 a bit more immersive. You might not have thought about this, but when you sprint in 2042, it's a sort of fluid feeling. It's almost like humans in 20 years' time are stronger and don't feel the weight of weapons and ammo, and more or less float above the surface. You remember the bug in Battlefield 5 that sometimes could give that sort of strange feeling? Well, DICE thought about it, and they are now looking to give us more down-to-earth feeling when running. This actually makes total sense, since you still do quite a lot of running simulator in Battlefield 2042. DICE tells us that they have looked at the older titles and compared the animations to 2042. Specifically, they brought a lot of inspiration from Battlefield 4, which you can see here, and the goal is to make 2042 feel a bit more heavy. It will depend a little bit on the weapon you carry, but the general idea is to feel that you're carrying a heavy weapon and a huge backpack full of ammo and other things. They also mentioned the quite interesting camera movement, and the new version will sort of rotate a bit more, rather than floating almost outside the body. The idea is to ensure that you know exactly where your body is, so no out-of-body experience here. Anyhow, this might not be something for everyone, and DICE has promised us a nice little setting in accessibility to turn this on or off, so we can actually choose ourselves if we want to be attached to our bodies. Nice, isn't it? One interesting thing that they mentioned is that when on foot, there is a fair bit of camera movement going on in different situations. However, all these camera movements are developed for the default field of view, which is 55. If you increase your field of view, there will be less camera movement. On to Irish. The old fella has been reworked a bit now compared to the first edition of 2042, hasn't he? Well, apparently DICE doesn't really like the Irish boxes. They are a bit overpowered, they say. And there is no downside of using it, they say. Honestly, I don't see any reason why there should be any downside. It's not like there's any downside to throwing ammo or putting a freaking turret on the ground. The Irish box will now take 1 second to place, then it will enter a searching mode. As soon as it finds one or more explosives, it will enter some other mode and get to work, but only for 5 seconds. So the short of it, you need 1 second to get going, and then it works for 5 seconds. Then it needs a break. Actually, it needs some 7 seconds break. During that time, it won't do anything. In a fantasy world, it might actually survive to rinse and repeat, but that's not very likely, is it? Although, I got some new intel quite late, frankly, which is why this video is a bit delayed. My man Total FPS wrote on Twitter that Irish boxes will chain, and you can actually see it in footage shown right now. So first box will discover stuff and start to delete, then after 5 seconds-ish, next box will have a look, and so on. This basically means that you have about 2 seconds to thread the needle if facing one Irish, or pretty much no downtime at all if facing multiple Irishes. In 2042 there is a ridiculous amount of explosives, and because of that I generally didn't think the Irish box was OP, and there was already sort of meta, to quote the DICE devs, as you could shoot it down. Oh yeah, there will be both visual and audio cues to know which state the box will be in, but I think that still can be quite messy when there's a whole bunch of them. But I mean, the same changes apply to the APS on the vehicles, so it will be even more clear than now what state they're in as well. That's not all of it. The Irish box won't stop EMP nades, it won't stop C5, and it won't stop tank shells anymore. While Irish gets quite the nerf, Dozer instead gets buffed. Apparently Dozer isn't good enough. DICE wants him to be a little human tank, to be a huge fighter rushing into the enemy lines as a Captain America. I think if they paint some stars and stripes on the shield, that would do the trick. But instead, they opted for some balancing changes. The hit registry and the hitbox is changed, and the shield can reach a little bit further. This is certainly going to piss me off when I'm the one getting a freaking barn wall in the face. Hey, that's okay. I can always change the Dozer and pay back. Furthermore, he's going to be more agile while carrying the shield. He will be able to strafe faster, turn faster, he will even be able to run faster, and he will be able to use zip lines with shields up. One sort of nerf is actually that the shield won't reflect fire as controlled as today. The idea is to feel a bit more natural and realistic. I mean, running into battle with shield is pretty realistic and natural. The field of view is increased, so the idea is to give Dozer players a bit more sense of awareness. Furthermore, on the same path, it will be more visible and apparent when players shoot at you, and you will actually get assist if enemies are killed in conjunction of firing at you. So I mean, if you haven't got the tier 1 of those yet, I wouldn't bother until season 5. Something to think about as Dozer, and as a counter to Dozer, if you fire with tank shells or recoilers at Dozer, he will briefly lower his shield, making him vulnerable. Hey, that's it for this week. I think it's great to get this information from DICE. It doesn't necessarily make me agree with their choices, and I don't think that is their intention either, but it gives me a better understanding of their choices. Sometimes I agree with its reasoning, sometimes I don't. Either way, I think the pods are a great touch, and I hope they will continue with that stuff. Anyway, hope you all have a nice weekend. Cheers!